Greedy owner tries to rip off my friend, ends up paying him double. My first job out of college was for a local TV station. The owner was and still is the worst human being I've ever met. This guy has money, but he will cheat and lie. Anything to get out of paying his bills. When I started working there, the owner had just signed a contract with DirecTV to become part of their broadcast package. Since they were at the time purely a local TV station, this meant that we had about 2 months to upgrade our system so that we can start broadcasting to DirecTV customers in the entire Bay Area. Every day that we failed to do this past the deadline means that the owner would suffer a penalty for the contract. Not knowing about how any of this works, the owner hired a friend of mine to come in as a freelance consultant. My friend told him that for about $15,000 USD he can get a system that will automate the entire process, which of course this guy didn't want to pay. He tasked my friend with finding a cheaper way around having to pay for all the hardware upfront and get reimbursed later. Knowing what a piece of SHT this guy is, I warned my friend not to front the money because he wouldn't get paid back. The guy just smiled and said watch me. So he made it work. We went live on schedule and the owner was happy. Then my friend went in and presented the guy with the bill. Immediately the usual excuses start, so, I'm a little short this month. Can I pay you later? Etc. etc. Then my friend pull out the trump card. Not only did my friend threaten to take all the equipments back and takes the station off the air, he reveals that in order to get the uplink working for cheap, someone had to come in every day and code the broadcast manually. It's not a terribly complicated procedure, takes less than 5 minutes, but of course no one else at the station knows how to do it but him. So either the owner can pay him what he's owed, plus a $2,000 month consulting fee, or the station goes dark and he starts paying the penalty to DirecTV. The fucker. So instead of $15,000, he ended up shelling out more than double that amount as my friend lapped up his $2,000 month fee for close to a year before he felt bad and finally teach someone there how to do it. Moral of the story: only thinking about short-term gain will always cost you more in the long run.
Story 2.
Former manager made my life hell and I finally got her fired. I was desperate to join a new job after my husband and I were both laid off last year. When I was offered a new role, I knew it would be a step down from what I was doing, but the manager and the team seemed great, and that part has not changed. However, since my manager Gary was so busy, he basically offloaded me to another manager, Jane. I was supposed to be the connection point between my team and Jane, but it quickly became Jane micromanaging me. She would ask me to work through lunch, cancel vacation days, call at 11 p.m. on weekends, and order me around on phone calls. She also made nasty comments about my weight and said I was big for my race. The list of personal slights so long that it filled 3 pages. I would talk back to her and she did not like that, and that provoked her more. I only stayed because we needed to pay the bills. Finally, I had a mental breakdown on a Friday afternoon, after she yelled at me for something trivial about scheduling a meeting without including someone from her team who I didn't know about. I was dealing with a family tragedy and couldn't take it anymore. I told Gary about the situation with Jane and he was sympathetic and not at all surprised considering half her team quit. He immediately offered to move me to a different team under him. I was thrilled. Well, turns out going to the new team didn't help. Jane continued to order me around from afar. When I ignored her emails, she came to my desk one day and started loudly talking about how I am not qualified for this role. Gary overheard and finally told her off, but the verbal abuse did not stop. After 2 months there, I abruptly wrote my resignation letter and stapled the list of Jane's offensive comments, and ceased everyone. Gary offered a bunch of accommodations to try to keep me, but seeing how she was still provoking from afar, I said the only way for me to stay would be for her to go, and he did not have authority to let her go. Her manager was in a different country and despite several HR complaints from at least 5 people, nothing was done. So I left, loudly and without shame, telling everyone exactly why I was leaving. Times were very bad for 3 months. There were nights we would eat slices of bread just so we could pay the mortgage and emergency expenses from a health crisis and a funeral. Even after he found a job, we were still catching up on bills and still are. I spent months applying to 5-10 roles per day, sometimes over 20. Last month, I saw a public memo about a big shot from a former company joining the company I just left. I used to work with this guy closely and texted him a congrats, let me know if you need any insights on the new place. We had a quick call where I told him some ins and outs, where I thought they could innovate. After this call, he asked me to join the team as his chief of staff. I accepted. Imagine Jane's shock when we had our first all-hands call. All the VPs and above were asked to welcome the new Big Shot in a giant conference room. In Big Shot's speech, he breezed over that I'll be his chief of staff, along with a few key names. I now sat 2 levels above Jane, and apparently, within the 3 months I was not there, the other half of her team turned over. Every single person left. Gary was excited for me and said all nice things. However, Jane took the classless route and sent Big Shot an email about how I'm an unqualified idiot. that I used to work for her, how I tried to get her fired, and that she suspects I lied to get ahead. She didn't even try to be fake nice. Big Shot forwarded me her email and asked what this was about. I was so nervous and excited. Little did Jane know, I was a director at Big Shot's competitor company and was already a level above her, so 2 levels isn't a big leap, and I worked with him for 5 years. I had an hour call with Big Shot and told him she was bad for the company culture and was a nasty person in general, but the evidence he needed was Gary confirming that her whole team has turnover, my prior resignation letter which was still sitting on my desktop when I logged in upon return, and a few other nasty emails she sent her recent staff, which they were happy to share with us. Big Shot fired Jane on Friday.
Story 3.
How I got my boss's job and my coworkers a 15 rice. Hey Reddit, I can finally share my story because now it is all over. I am on mobile, also English isn't my mother language, and this is my first post ever on Reddit, so PLS be gentle, haha. And sorry for the long post. To the backstory, this all happened in an EU country, I don't say which one, sorry. I did my apprenticeship in a mid to big size factory as a machine operator. After I completed my apprenticeship I worked in the production for around 1 month. Then I got called into the office and they asked me if I can do some holiday replacements, so I said yes, why not, better hours and clean work. I got teach the systems, which was pretty easy because I manufactured those parts for 1 year. After my coworker came back from their vacation they asked me to stay and became a part of their team. So I said yes, sounds good. So I was now working in the sale quality department. Now to the present time, 7 years later, our team increased from 5 worker to 15 because of restructuring, which helped us a lot. My boss retired last fall, and after Christmas we got a new young boss around my age, 27, who was a major asshole and sexist. We got a few weeks before him a new hire, a lovely young girl age 19, which I trained her. If you are new you are doing some error, which is totally fine in my opinion. So I come in last Tuesday to hear my new boss screaming like a maniac at this young girl. I asked her what happened and she said she filled the wrong form, which happens even to me. My boss noticed it and screamed at her, I paraphrase it, "Boss, you stupid little slut, who dumb can you be to fill out the wrong form? I should fire you and make sure that you never find any work in this field again." Coworker started crying at this point. Then my boss stormed into his office and slammed the door shut. I asked my coworker if she's okay, and she was still sobbing, so I brought her a coffee and took her to our office. Grandma, everyone loves here so much. I was at this point pretty pissed and told everyone what happened. After they learned what he did to our new coworker, 3 stormed into his office and quit after 25 years in this company. Ex-boss said to them that they are worthless and overpaid. They told us that a plan was formed, everyone will quit except for me for now. What my boss didn't know yet is we had a huge customer audit happening in 3 weeks, which I am the only certified to prepare for. If we fail this, it would cost us 15 to 20 million euros and the customer would pull the contract. So after my boss learned that the whole department quit except for me, he was even more pissed. Boss, hey, why the hell did everyone quit me? Maybe because you are asshole and a sexist pig? Boss, what did you just say, you asshole? Me, you know what I said, and do you remember the big audit in 3 weeks by customer X? Boss, yeah, what's about that? Me, you know that I am the only one certified to prepare it, right? Boss, yeah, and me, I quit as well because I do not want to work for such a asshole. Boss, see ya. And walked right out to my other coworkers to say goodbye in the whole factory. The production VP noticed it and asked what happened, so I told him and he was pissed. He called the CEO, which I knew pretty well, and said, Robert, the shit hit the fan big time, come down to the production floor now. The CEO asked if it's important and the VP said, if you want to pass the audit in 3 weeks then move your ass down here now. So the CEO came running down with the entire C-suits and asked what's so important. Then I piped up and said our whole department quit today and won't come back until this motherfucker of boss gets removed and fired. Then they asked what happens and we told them. They were mad and asked how they can fix it. I said fire him and hire a better fit. Because I held the most trainings and qualifications, they asked me, which I gladly said yes. So we took up to my new office with my old department and the CEO in tow. My boss saw me and said arrogantly, decided to came back and beg for your job back, you little R-word. Me, not just to inspect my new office cause you were fired by now. He laughed and said that I am under him and only the CEO can fire him. So the CEO came around the little corner and said to my boss, get the fuck out of my company, you are fired. And I make sure that every company knows what you did. My ex-boss was white as a sheet. After that, the CEO called the police and reported him trespassing. In the end I got a 70k raise and a bonus option, which I declined and asked if we can split it for my coworkers. I don't need that much money, 1 million euro worth of bonuses. My CEO agreed and everyone got their job back and we complete the audit without any fails. The customer was happy and so we are too. If you have questions I will answer them in the commands.
Story 4.
I was fired early in my career by a team of 2 senior people. I reported to Revenge came in time. Edit below for clarification. When I was in my early 20s trying to make it in the world and just starting out, I reported to a senior sales team as a junior salesperson. Really, it was a support role and I knew my place: watch, stay quiet, learn and help them. I report to a lady who was mid-level and the senior guy who was head of sales. I was green. And while I was seeking mentorship and periodically asking for advice to improve how I was able to support them, they mistook it for incompetence. It was simple things like learning what format each of them preferred their daily reports in, and tasks they had to do. I also had an issue because the senior guy basically stole my first bonus at the 3-month mark. It was tiny amount to him but a lot for young me. I didn't officially complain but asked him about how he was able to keep my bonus when it was obvious it tracked back to my efforts on the data. He didn't like that and didn't pay me. I was doing a good job, I'm fully aware of my skills, but with the explanation it's just not working out, they fired me a few weeks later. I spent a couple months getting a new job which turned out to be an amazing smaller firm where I was appreciated, mentored correctly and thrived. The new firm was very successful. They brought me into a room, the 2 of them, and fired me. She was the one who said it's just not working out, and he said, so we're letting you go. Even to my question as to why, since from the beginning I had been doing well. About 2 years later, after I'd become a vital but still junior part of the smaller company, my former firm closed up in the region and put everyone out of work. So I saw through the glass while walking by the boardroom one day that the senior guy who stole my bonus was being interviewed for a job at my current firm. My current superiors didn't see me walk by but my old boss, and I made eye contact. Now, in a small sales team at a small firm, it's important to have a nice working relationship and trust. It's also a lot of selfish salespeople who are there to make money and don't like being ripped off. So later that afternoon I quietly mentioned to the one boss I saw X in the office today when I walked by. I used to work for him. That asshole stole my bonus one time. It was all I needed to say because the last thing my current boss needed was a person who'd do that on our team. Then times got tough and I know that man spent 2 years looking for work. 6 or 7 years later I was at a new company in a more senior role, and the one lady who I originally reported to called me and was selling at a new firm, and she was calling to ask if I'd be interested in purchasing from her. I didn't know she had started working there. The firm she was with was selling something that was very basic and interchangeable to competing firms. She'd gone from selling important things to selling a nothing product after the original firm closed. She acted all happy and nice to me and recalled the great job I did when we worked together. I also know she didn't want to be talking to me, but her call log said she had to call. I told her thanks and send me along an official quote and proposal. Several hours of work for her. In the industry we were in, she was paid not only on new sales but a net sales measurement, meaning she had to retain clients as well and bring in new ones. I had a lot of commitment at the firm she was now at. While she spent her afternoon drafting a proposal, I spent a couple hours pulling all my business from that company and subbing it for a competitor up the street. She emailed me a full proposal and mentioned she was excited to be working with me again and supporting my business. She had no idea yet I just pulled everything and she would never receive a bonus this year because of the size of the amount I pulled. The next day she emailed me quite upset and had CC'd her boss, who I've known for years and had a good working relationship with. I replied to all and thanked her and said I'd decided to go with a competitor because it just won't work out, as I find your approach to business dealings to be insincere. Her boss emailed me back directly and asked what happened, and I replied that I just don't think she is a sincere person. My business to their firm was worth more than her job and she didn't last more than a month there after that.
Story 5.
Try to steal my legally rented parking spot? Enjoy being unemployed. This happened last night. I am now in a good enough spot to actually post this. I'm not quite sure if it qualifies as pro, but it definitely isn't petty. I am a professional driver. As such, on the roads in the US, there are different truck stops throughout the country that has a pay-to-park system, usually about 10-20 of the lot marked off as reserved, with each space running from $15 to $25. The truck stop where this took place had parking for $17, which is relatively cheap for a guaranteed spot. The spots are reserved for 24 hours, starting at 4 p.m. local time, and extending to 3 p.m. the following afternoon. I knew that I would have a late night delivery, so I came to the truck stop around 3:30, and paid for a reserved spot. I told the manager on duty that I had a delivery up the road that night, and would be back once delivery was completed, but should still be able to clear out the spot by the next afternoon today. She told me that this was okay, and she would mark the spot as sold when I left. That way, if someone else comes in trying to reserve that spot, she could consult her notes and deny the sale. 11:15 p.m. rolls around. I take off for my delivery. I don't get out of that facility until 2:30 a.m. the next morning. So, I groggily drive back to the truck stop to reclaim my paid-for spot, only to find that the reserved parking spaces are all full. I call the manager on duty, and after giving her my info, inform her that all the spots are full. and that someone has parked in a spot and hasn't paid for it. She sends her other employee out to start checking trucks. The culprit was from a company that is known for their bright orange trailers, and he was a company driver. The other employee starts banging on his door to inform him that he is parked illegally, and he has to move. Meanwhile, I can see the commotion from my mirror, with my vantage point in the fuel island where I had been instructed to temporarily park. The driver answers the door with a bottle of Heineken in one hand, and some sort of smoking implement in another. I know what it is, but for the sake of the mods, I'm not gonna say it. I decided to roll down the window to hear the commotion, and I hear the employee tell the driver to either move, or he will get the towing company and police involved. This driver is flat out irate that someone had the audacity to tell him where he can and cannot park, so he slams the door on the employee, threatening him. Employee calls the police and tow company, and the police show up first. I had worked for this company before, so I know their policies, and more importantly, what they can and cannot have in their trucks. Alcoholic beverages are not allowed in the cab. Anything that isn't a cigarette or a cigar and a light are also not allowed. The coup de grace pew-pew, of any kind, absolutely not allowed, and especially not allowed loaded. This driver had all that, and some other not-so-legal substances in his cab, so he was hauled away in cuffs. His truck was hauled away on a wrecker. I made a call after the commotion died down to the company's safety director, and informed them that their rig will be in an impound lot, and their driver is going to jail over the not-so-legal stuff he had in his truck. She thanked me, and said that he will definitely lose his job, especially over the alcohol and the other not-so-legal stuff. I guess he played the screw around and find out card, and it bit him in his career. Boss tried to sleep with my fiancée. This was several years ago. So my boss, an extreme type A personality, found out I was seeing a young lady at another one of our offices. It was a long-distance relationship. He was the type he liked to control everything and mess with people for fun. He was also married to another employee, but he was very unfaithful. And he had a hobby, photography. He liked to take pics of himself and his conquest, in the act. Then he would show the pics around the production floor and brag about it. Well, on his next trip to this other office he tried to get my girlfriend to sleep with him, but she spurned him. He made up some lies and got her fired. It took a long time, but I was patient. I knew he kept the photos in his office. He could not risk keeping them at home where his wife might stumble upon them. One Saturday I was working out and the cleaning lady came through. They unlocked his office. I came in acting like I was taking dimensions on some drawings. The lady just asked me to close the door when I was finished. She left and went down toward accounting. That's when I went through his desk. Sure enough, in the back of one drawer I found a stack of photos for it all. I took them all. Then I waited until he went on another trip. When he did, I went out for lunch. I had a dozen pics of him, in the act with 4 different women, all showing his face. The women all had dark or red hair. His wife is a blonde. I drove to the town he lived in, to the closest post office to his house, and mailed the pics to his wife with no return address. She divorced him, and her lawyer took him to the cleaners. My girlfriend is now my wife, and we aren't mad anymore.